sorrow as Ivy Wangeshi's family moves her body to their hometown.
And it's a new dawn for Sudan. President Omar al-Bashir ousted and arrested as military takes over.
NTV Tonight with Mark Masai and Smriti Vidyarthi.
Thank you once again for joining us. Also presenting the news in sign language is Flora Atieno tonight.
Now, the reality of maize hoarding by farmers has made its way to your home and now reaches even deeper into your pockets.
Tonight, retailers have begun putting the new price tags on their shelves, with the price of maize meal or unga ugali having gone up by over 10 shillings per 2-kilogram pack in some cases.
Now, unga, whose 2-kilogram pack was retailing in the range of about 90 shillings, has now gone up to 109 shillings for some brands. Well, this is despite the government insisting that the prices are not as high as claimed.
This is attributed to a shortage caused by farmers holding on to their maize, with the government unable to do much about it, as it only holds a fifth of the stocks.
Well, the government has lifted the 400-bag limit for farmers delivering maize to the National Cereals and Produce Board as a measure to stabilize supply and, in turn, the price of unga.
This comes after the price rose by up to 28%. Zainab Wandati kicks off our broadcast on the concerns of food security in light of efforts to weed out cartels.
In the last 7 days, consumers have watched helplessly as the price of a 2 kg packet of maize meal rose by between 10 and 19 shillings. Now, millers have blamed this rise on the shortage of maize in the country, and they say that the situation is only going to get worse over the next few weeks if that grain doesn't hit the market soon. But the Ministry of Agriculture, on the other hand, says that if you're looking for someone to blame, it is not the government.
The country has an estimated current maize stock of 21 million.
The government maintains that this grain is enough to push the country through to June. But the challenge is that 13 million bags, or 61% of the total stocks, is in the hands of farmers who are not releasing it to the market. Government stores are holding 4.3 million bags, which is 20% of the stocks. This was largely attributed to NCPB's move to cap the number of bags each farmer could sell to NCPB at 400, dampening the farmers' will to sell to the government. The farmers say that they were left with so much grain in their stores, yet they had nowhere else to take it. The ministry has since lifted this cap.
If National Cereals and Produce Board is buying for 2,500 and there is somebody willing to buy for 2,800, where would you sell?
The government insists that it will not interfere in the prices of maize meal, popularly referred to as unga ugali. However, it says it is looking at the possibility of releasing maize to millers from NCPB to provide some relief for the rising prices.
Agriculture is a devolved function, and that is why we are calling upon the county government to step in and ensure that those who planted early will be able to be supported for them to be able to now plant when the rains come.
The long rain season is already halfway gone, but the ground is largely dry and thirsty. The ministry is projecting a sharp decline in this season's harvest and a possibility of further rises in the cost of unga. Kunjuri says that there is no need to panic yet because a solution will have been found by the time the current stocks run out. He has called on Kenyans to diversify their diets so as to ease the pressure on maize. Zainab Wandati, NTV.
Still on scarcity, the villages in Kieni in Nyeri County border two major water towers, but residents have had to rely on relief food as rains failed them yet again.
Well, now a biting food shortage and a lack of water is the new normal. NTV's Melita Oletenges has more on the dust bowl in Nyeri's food basket.
It's an area at a crossroad, nestled in between the Mount Kenya forest and the splendor of the Aberdares, yet caught between cycles of more scarcity than plenty. Kieni, in the lush Nyeri County, is also suffering the vagaries of the long dry spell. Yet, it is one of the most productive areas during the rainy seasons. But farmers have had to endure long dry spells, their crop has wilted, and their livestock barely have enough to feed on. Their livestock is growing weaker with each passing sunny day. The only relief for the over 100,000 Kieni residents sometimes is the relief food that they have come to depend on.
Na kiangazi imetuaffect mifugo, maji, mimea.
It's a semi-arid land, rivers cut across it, but there is none left during the dry seasons, not enough water for domestic use for its residents or enough to water their crops. Promises by the government, including Deputy President William Ruto, to put up 2 dams to act as reservoirs during the good times are still unfulfilled.
Why is it that we are being segregated? Why is it that they are not doing dams here? And we don't even have any issue of compensation. The dams that we have proposed in this constituency will be done in the forest.
Even as residents here queue for a chance at nourishment, they still look to the skies with hope that the rains will soon nurture their parched lands. Melita Oletenges, NTV.
All right, well, here's something else that is hard to come by nowadays, and that is jobs. This is despite the government's promise to create 1.3 million of them annually.
The Federation of Kenya Employers, FKE, has warned that more job cuts could be on the way if the prevailing economic situation does not improve, but unionists are at odds with FKE's assessment.
NTV's Olive Burrows paints a portrait of contrast, a growing economy but a shrinking job space.
Because they know Labor Day is around the corner, they want to threaten us by now telling us that they will declare workers redundant.
This was the trade unionists' response to the Federation of Kenya Employers' warning that if things continue on their current trajectory as far as the business environment in Kenya is concerned, then the unemployment situation in the country is bound to worsen.
The financial sector has been under stress, the agricultural sector has been under stress, the manufacturing sector has seen a number of exits, and now with the ban on logging, for instance, the employees in that sector have also had to be exited because those companies have had to close down.
The caution coming less than a week after President Uhuru Kenyatta delivered his State of the Nation address, glorifying Kenya's remarkable economic growth. The government promised 1.3 million jobs annually when campaigning for a second term. But data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics shows that the government has failed to live to its promise. The 2018 economic survey shows that less than 900,000 jobs were created in 2017, 83% of these in the informal sector.
A large informal sector suggests to us that there's something that is structurally wrong. And what economists say is structurally wrong is that we have too many people in farming, right? We need to start moving labor by creating new employment in manufactured farms.
While acknowledging that the business environment in the country could do with some improvement, critically where corruption is concerned, the unions still expect the government to share the spoils of the positive economic growth they celebrate with the workers.
So they cannot apportion the blame to workers who toil from 6 to 6 in the evening, some even 24 hours working.
But the experts advise that caution is prudent.
Employers have an interest in having employees produce because obviously that's what affects their bottom line. So if they're complaining that they've seen over the last close to last 2 years, business conditions getting tighter in a way that's forcing them to squeeze their own bottom lines, and part of the options they're considering is that they may lay off workers, it's something we should listen to very, very carefully.
And as we head to Labor Day and the Kenyan workers and the unemployed look up expectantly at government, the prognosis is bleak.
The Jubilee administration, we have audited their programs. None of the things that they said which enhance welfare have been achieved except for spending money. That they've done well. Some of it ending up without being traced, and obviously we are debating. That they've done. It's just spending money, making sure that budgets continue to grow and all that they've done.
Olive Burrows, NTV.
Let's just pause on the concerns here in the country for a bit and look at this man. This picture is actually quite apt because he is one of the longest serving presidents, Omar al-Bashir, and has been ousted and arrested.
Well, the military has taken charge of the country, with Defense Minister General Awad Mohammed Ahmed Ibn Auf set to lead a 2-year transitional government before paving way for an election.
The country has also been placed on a 3-month curfew, with its borders and airspace remaining shut.
On the streets of Khartoum, the red, green, white and black flag is hoisted high, waved in victory after a wave of adamant protest. The prized outcome of a spirited 4-month uprising that has brought President Omar al-Bashir's 30-year autocratic rule tumbling down. The downfall was triggered by his government's attempt to raise the price of bread as well as fuel and cash shortages. Residents of Khartoum have over the past week staged a sit-in protest outside the country's defense ministry, calling for the removal of the president. And on Thursday, 11th of April 2019, the military took over under the leadership of the country's defense minister, General Awad Mohammed Ahmed.
We announced the shutting down of Sudan's airspace and border crossings for 24 hours until further notice, and dissolving the presidency institution from parliamentarians to the assistants, as well as dissolving of the government. The minister's agents will continue the job.
The military, which then suspended the country's constitution, has placed al-Bashir under arrest. The general made public more measures during a televised address.
The dissolving of the National Council and the Council of Provinces, the dissolving of the governments and the legislative councils of the provinces, and the assignment of the governors and the security forces to perform their duties.
The new administration has placed Omar al-Bashir in a quote-unquote safe place, while a military council takes over the running of the country for a 2-year transitional period, after which elections are set to be held. Bashir has been at the helm in Sudan for 30 years. In 1989, when he was a brigadier in the army, he led the ouster of the then democratically elected Prime Minister Sadiq al-Mahdi. He then presided over a civil war that led to the division of the country into two, Sudan and South Sudan. His rule also witnessed the Darfur conflict that left tens of thousands dead and 2.5 million people displaced. Those episodes earned him an indictment by the International Criminal Court and subsequent warrants of arrest in 2009 and 2010. The arrest warrants led to an international travel ban. However, Bashir has made a diplomatic visit to Kenya during the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution. Here, a Kenyan High Court judge had ordered the state to arrest him. That did not happen. In February this year, he sent a delegation led by his Vice President Osman Mohamed Yusuf at State House, Nairobi, with a special message seeking to assure that the situation in Sudan was under control and the country was calm, contrary to implications by foreign actors. This was among his actions of reaching out to other states in the region. He also made visits to Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and South Africa. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
Right, from that story, let's bring you back home now. And relatives of the late Ivy Wangeshi, the Moi University student murdered 2 days ago, numb in grief, began a distressing journey to the hospital to pick up her body and take it home for the final burial rites.
The parents, who were among the crowd of friends and colleagues, kept away from the glare of the cameras. NTV's Lois Wangoi reports that her killer is expected to be charged with her murder as soon as he leaves hospital.
The final painful steps in a grim new journey of grief. Friends and Ivy Wangeshi's student colleague. The final painful steps in a grim new journey of grief. Friends and Ivy Wangeshi's student colleagues gathered at the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital in a collective sense of loss to catch a final glimpse of her as her family came to her home in Thika for burial preparations. A community united in its struggle to battle the torment in the face of a void she has left when her young life was cut short in the most heinous way. Her family played it close to its chest, avoiding any contact with the media. It was difficult to pick them out from a sea of distraught faces.
They have collected her body and they are going to go home, and they have meetings, family meetings, and they will let us know what comes out of those meetings.
The grieving community converged outside the hospital's anatomy lab. One by one they went in with quiet offerings to the departed Ivy. It is a place she was familiar with. She had spent most of her time here as a student.
We are with the family throughout from the beginning up to now, and we will continue to be with them up to the end. They will let us know when the arrangements have been made, and we will walk with them on this journey.
Her attacker Naftali Njahi Kinothia is expected to be released from MTRH's Nyayo ward, where he has been recuperating after members of the public roughed him up after he hacked Ivy to death. The hearse carrying Ivy's remains left the gates of the hospital, finally in the care of her family. 6 years ago, the parents to Ivy Wanzashi made their first visit to Eldoret, these to enroll their daughter at Moi University College of Health Sciences as a student of the School of Medicine. Now they had hoped that 7 years later their daughter would graduate to join the medical fraternity as a doctor. But that dream remains just that. On this day they returned to Eldoret, but to collect her dead body owing to a crime. The person involved in that crime is still under investigation. Lois Ongoy, NTV, Eldoret.
As we await justice on this, we pray for the comfort of the friends and family of the late Ivy Wanzashi. Poleni sana. To another story that is under investigation, I should say, of a 2-month-old baby, Austin Gerogi, who lost his limbs after botched BCG vaccination at the Kihara Sub-County Hospital in Kiambu County.
Well, his parents, Peter Gitonga and Leah Waithera, have made several trips to the police station in search of answers and are expected back at the Karuri police station for a status update. Here's NTV's Mel Miendo with more.
2-month-old Austin Gerogi was born perfectly healthy until a routine BCG vaccination robbed him of his limbs and his parents of their joy. Leah Waithera and Peter Gitonga will, however, have to wait for much longer for the justice and answers they so desperately need. Their son was born at the Kihara Sub-County Hospital on the 7th of February 2019. A BCG injection was administered 3 days later, and now he has to maneuver through life without his left arm and right leg. They were amputated at the Kenyatta National Hospital after he developed complications and his limbs turned blue. The parents accused the staff of Kihara Hospital who attended to him of negligence and want police to start criminal investigations against the hospital.
Yule mbaba halikuja, nafikiri alipata ushauri kutoka mahali kuwa lazima polisi waende pale wasimamie masuala yale. Akakataa kabisa, lakini tukamwomba ende akachukue ushauri wa madaktari na mtoto atibiwe.
The parents are expected to make another trip to the Karuri police station Friday morning to record another statement.
Inategemeana na facts zile ambazo ziko professional negligence, na iko pia upande wa civil ambazo mtoto ameathirika, labda mtu anaweza kuwa amekuwa mlegevu katika upande wa kazi yake.
The hospital is yet to respond to the claims against it. NTV has since established that the medical file is in the custody of the Kiambu County government. Efforts to reach the county executive in charge of health were, however, unsuccessful. Mel Miendo, NTV.
Grace and strength to that family, and God bless that little boy. He will be okay. All right, well, from one difficult story to another. The autopsy report on a prison warder whose body was found in a thicket in Subukia in Nakuru County a day after she went missing reveals that Caroline Chesire was strangled.
The warder who served in the women's wing of the Nakuru GK prison went missing on the 2nd of April, and a male colleague is in custody as investigations into her murder continues. Bridget Ngana reports.
Caroline Chesire was number 4 in the family. Na tuko na huzuni sana kupoteza mtoto aliyekuwa mwaminifu nyumbani. Please, let me stop it.
Inconsolable relatives of the late Caroline Chesire, a warder at the Nakuru GK prison. The family only identified her body on Wednesday, nearly a week after she went missing, and her father says they were always in constant communication with Caroline. In her last moments, Caroline was seen in the company of 2 other warders in Nakuru's Central Business District on the night of April 2nd. She did not report to work the following day, but her superiors and peers saw no cause for alarm.
We just booked absent for 7 days. After 7 days, that is where we will write a signal to the Commissioner General to inform that this person was to be on duty but has missed herself, absent herself for 7 days.
It is still a mystery to the family, the gruesome death of their daughter who had barely worked a year at the Nakuru GK prison. The autopsy report reveals that Caroline may also have been sexually assaulted. Police are currently holding one of the prison officers last seen with the deceased, while one of the suspects is still at large. The family of the late prison warden who had just served here at the women's section of the Nakuru GK prison says that it is still concerned about what could have led to her brutal death. They do believe that the police investigations will finally lead to the arrest of the culprits, but they do hope that this is something that will be concluded as fast as possible. Bridget Ngana, NTV, Nakuru.
Trouble is piling up for former Garissa Member of Parliament and Assistant Minister Danson Mungatana after the EACC said it had unquestionable evidence against him in the investigations into the theft of 51 million shillings from the Kilifi County government.
Mungatana, who was arrested by EACC detectives earlier today alongside 4 others, was charged with fraud and was released on a 5 million shilling bond until the case is heard in May. NTV's Silas Apollo has more.
The former Garissa MP was arrested while on his way to Kajiado and stands accused of conspiring with others to defraud the Kilifi County government of 51 million shillings. And the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission now says that it has a watertight case against the MP, whose was the commission says traces years back.
The case is now in Malindi, and those who will be guilty, you know the consequences. And those who will be found innocent, they'll be released. So it's a watertight case. Yes, that public money was misused.
Other suspects were arrested in different parts of the country and include former Principal Accountant Josephine Muramba, Senior Accountant John Kalume, Deputy Director Accounts Department Paul Mwanzo, Procurement Officer Ibrahim Wanje, and business women Benaya Mugavana and Lucy Kibogo. EACC says it is in pursuit of 14 other suspects said to be behind the theft. And in the court today, Mungatana's lawyer Ndegwa Njiru asked the court to put off his client's plea taking as he was still mourning the death of his wife, a request that the prosecution opposed. The suspects are said to have paid some 6 companies for services they did not offer and goods not supplied, with the companies involved in the scheme identified as Daima One Enterprises, Zohali Services Limited, Makegra Supplies Limited, Kilingi Investments Company Limited, Leadership Age Associated Limited, and Johazi Investment Company. EACC said the local service orders used for the transactions were fake and they did not originate from the county government. The commission further says the county officials who've been arrested processed and approved payments for services not delivered. Mungatana had in 2017 been enjoined in a case involving one of the companies suspected to have stolen millions of shillings from the Kilifi County government's central bank account. The former MP also hit headlines late last year after he was allegedly defrauded of 76 million shillings. Silas Apollo, NTV.
All right, it's just gone past 20 past the hour. You've been watching NTV Tonight. Time for a breather, but as always, there's plenty coming up. Stay with us.
Dunda Majun.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, all public servants will be required to disclose their income and assets if a new policy by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is adopted.
The EACC says this policy will be an effectual tool in the war on graft and will help the Commission recover ill-gotten wealth from public servants. NTV's Seth Olale with the details.
In what the anti-graft watchdog hails as a far-reaching campaign against corruption, EACC is proposing changes to the Public Officers Ethics Act 2003 and the Leadership and Integrity Act 2012 in order to lighten the rules guiding wealth declaration among public servants. The changes, they say, will smoothen the procedure for disclosing wealth and will enhance lifestyle audits on suspected corrupt persons.
Governor, how are you?
If the amendments go through, all public servants will have to provide an online submission of their financials. This includes generated income and assets to support content verification and enhance compliance. Law enforcement agencies will also have access to this financial information to help them enforce the rules and prescribe penalties for those who don't submit.
It will be easier for us to trace any illicit acquired wealth and recover it, because that's part of our very serious mandate. It will also help us to prevent corruption before it happens.
This system, the EACC says, will provide them a means to detect and manage potential conflict of interest. It will also help them detect and prosecute those with ill-gotten wealth. The Anti-Corruption Commission says workers in the private sector should also declare their wealth.
In Kenya, we have a challenge where these forms are just free, they are kept secret, and actually for us to access it as EACC for investigation purposes.
The government had in July of last year directed all public servants to be subjected to a lifestyle audit, but the Public Service Commission suspended the directive that also required civil servants to disclose shares, bonds and properties, as well as consultancy work, as the government clamped down on graft in the public service.
We look at a preventive approach, and that is where, like today, we have this validation of the processes on income, liability and assets. And also on the deterrence part of it, we have to get hold of the culprits.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Watchdog, which is on a mission to regain public confidence, has vowed to pursue and extend its operations against senior persons of interest implicated in various corruption cases. Seth Olale, NTV at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, Nairobi County.
Right, from that, we now bring you news from the Courts of Appeal, and the Judge Erastus Kithinji will continue to serve as an appellate judge until a case he filed against the Judicial Service Commission challenging his retirement is heard and determined.
The court has, in the meantime, stopped the JSC from effecting a retirement notice which would see the judge retire months ahead of time. Kithinji says his age was incorrectly calculated and that the administrative decision to retire him was in bad faith, irrational, unreasonable, adversely affects his rights and further exposes him to great prejudice, including criminal liability.
A receptionist at the Desai Villa Hotel in Ngara here in Nairobi told a court that 3 terror suspects who were planning an attack on the Milimani law courts left the hotel without checking out. She said the suspects had rented 2 rooms whose keys were found in the vehicle which they had allegedly planned to use in the attack.
They were arrested in February 2018 with police having recovered an array of weaponry. Investigations revealed that the 3 had been in constant communication with well-known Al-Shabaab terrorists based in Somalia prior to their arrests.
And finally, in our court wrap in Muranga, a man who allegedly killed a 5-year-old boy has been placed under police custody for 8 days.
Paul Njogona Gerogi, who appeared before resident magistrate Sheila Nyaga, is accused of slashing to death the minor using a panga after the boy's mother turned down his marriage proposal.
The investigating officer asked the court to detain the suspect longer to enable him to complete investigations.
Dear Lord. Now, residents of Korogosho are trying to pick up the pieces after a fire killed 3 people, left 10 hospitalized and tens others homeless.
The Tuesday fire was so destructive that 5 of the 10 admitted in hospital, among them a pregnant woman, are in the intensive care unit at the Kenyatta National Hospital.
Dawa pia zilichomeka zangu, mimi ama kidney transplant patient. Niko na dawa kama ya mwaka mzima. Na mwezi ni kama 60,000, yote ilichomeka.
Mzee Somo is still trying to come to terms with the tragedy that befell him and his neighbors in Korogosho Tuesday afternoon.
Wakati huo mkasa wa moto ukitokea, mimi nilikuwa nimeenda kujiandika hii nambari ya huduma. Nilichukua watoto wangu 5 nikaenda nao. Kisha wawili tuliwatuma nyumbani. Wanapofika ndani, gesi lilipuka na watoto waliweza kuchomeka ndani.
Mzee Somo says his children were rescued but are in critical condition. They are admitted at the Kenyatta National Hospital's ICU. 22-year-old Hadija Ali is now recuperating after she was discharged from hospital. She is among the lucky residents who survived the fierce blaze. At least 3 people died and 6 are in critical condition.
Kuna book niko nasoma nikasikia tu kumelipuka all of a sudden. So at the moment nikapiga step moja kuangalia what was going on. Hivyo nikaanguka nikasikia kumecrack. Niko karibu na teremka hivi na set moja. And even your motor, at least I think your motor in chapa.
The fire is suspected to have started from a faulty gas cylinder in a neighboring house before it spread to 16 houses, most of which share walls and narrow pathways, which made it hard for firefighters to access the scene.
Maombi yetu, kilio yetu ni kwa wahisani, serikali kuu na wasamaria wema wa Kenya wote. Tunataka usaidizi. Paka saa hizi hatukupata wafadhili ama usaidizi ya maana. Juzi ndio tulipokea msaada ya box moja ya Red Cross.
As the affected families pick up the pieces and strive to move forward, they are calling on their leaders to be more involved. Helen Aura, NTV.
Our condolences to the families that lost their loved ones, and we say sorry to those who also lost property, homes, and quick recovery to those who are hospitalized. It's now time for another break. It's been a heavy first half of this bulletin, Smriti, so why don't we take a break? And Julian Samboko is just getting ready to bring you the business of the day. Stay with us. The only name in business. Welcome, I am Julian Amboko. The Kenya Aviation Workers Union does not have confidence that the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Airways, Sebastian Mikoz, can guide the management of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport by Kenya Airways to fruitful performance. This even as the Kenya Airline Pilots Association says it supports the privately initiated investment proposal by KQ, even though it has not fully acquainted itself with its details. Alex Mwangi has more on the controversial proposal, whose suitability is still a bone of contention.
Down the airline.
On Thursday, the Transport Committee of the National Assembly hosted officials of the Kenya Aviation Workers Union and the Kenya Airline Pilots Association to get their views about the contentious privately initiated investment proposal from Kenya Airways to take over the management of the JKIA from the Kenya Airports Authority.
Because the special purpose vehicle is proposed to be owned by KQ. At some point, KQ will decide which employees to retain and which ones to let go. So obviously then that becomes a labor dispute.
Pilots were put on the spot for taking the bulk of the airline's salaries.
In the past 3 years, we have lost 130 pilots and they have gone to the Middle East. I'm sure if we were the highest paid pilots in the world, that will not happen. But we are patriotic and we have decided to stay here and stay with the company. We know if we go, Kenyans will not be able to get skilled pilots like us at the pay that they do. It is impossible.
Kenya Airways pilots are still operating what we call long-haul flights and ultra-long-haul flights with a crew complement that is lower than, or rather less than industry standard.
The issue of how well KQ communicates its strategies with its stakeholders was a recurring theme.
And we started asking for the actual proposal, the PIIP proposal, which we were told was around 463 pages. Today, Mr. Chair, even as we appear before you, we do not have that proposal.
According to CALPA, we don't have very many details in regards to this, but we know, as he rightfully said, there were agreements that were signed some time back that are coming to haunt Kenya Airways, because those agreements give enormous powers to KLM.
From the presentations made by the Kenya Aviation Workers Union and the Kenya Airline Pilots Association to the Transport Committee of the National Assembly here at County Hall, it is clear that KQ's management keeps stakeholders in the dark over crucial decisions it makes in the oversight of the airline. This, without doubt, is one of the major reasons the company is flying through such turbulence. Alex Mwangi, NTV.
Clearly, the headwinds facing that proposed takeover are not going away anytime soon. The average price of coffee at the Nairobi Coffee Exchange in the second quarter of the 2018-2019 season dropped by 21.5% to 19,500 shillings per 50 kilogram bag, down from 21,920 shillings over the same period last year. Data from the exchange indicates that volume of coffee traded over the 6-month period between October last year and March this year also recorded a marginal 31.6% drop from 21,100 to 20,300 metric tons. The depressed performance is attributed to suppressed prices in the international market in New York, occasioned by increased production, mainly by Brazil. The 10 and 20-year bonds sold between the 22nd of March and 9th of April have raised 60 billion shillings against the target of 50 billion shillings. This pushes the amount which has been raised through issuance of bond this year to 192 billion shillings, with the latest issuance having attracted relatively high appetite from investors, with bids worth 86 billion shillings being 72% higher than the target amount having been received. The funds raised through the 10 and 20-year bonds will be expected to provide budgetary support in the remaining 2 months of the financial year 2018-2019. And moving on, the Postal Corporation of Kenya has ventured into clearing and forwarding business with the launch of the Postal Cargo Service and the National Logistics Hub in a bid to boost revenues in the wake of disruption by new technologies. Through the Postal Cargo Service, the corporation will widen its countrywide infrastructure to compete with other players in the market as it looks to make a comeback. Victor Kiprop with that story.
Caught up by technology and competition, the Postal Corporation of Kenya monopolized the communication field in Kenya for decades, commanding a large chunk of market share. And now, the postman is looking to make a comeback.
The postal industry worldwide is striving to remain in tandem with the global trends in this sector. This is equally the case in our local postal sectors. The current market and customer needs calls for involvement of all players in the supply chain, including customs and transport, as well as the facilitation of the cross-border e-commerce.
Having successfully ventured into the delivery of election and learning materials and began clearing and delivery of imported motor vehicles, the corporation is now looking to widen its scope, eyeing more import and export goods. Postal is also eyeing the fast-growing e-commerce sector through partnerships with key players including American online shipping firm Amazon.
With the changing of how people do business, certainly people have to realign themselves with the trends. And it's very normal. At times you may try an option that does not work, but then with the focusing on e-commerce, then I would want to believe this is the right channel, because basically even business and every other thing we do is currently being driven by technology.
With technological advancements and growing competition that have nearly pushed it out of business, the Postal Corporation of Kenya has been employing a number of strategies to stay in business, most of which have failed. But with the launch of the Postal Cargo Service at the National Logistics Hub, the corporation hopes it has finally touched the right buttons. Victor Kiprop, NTV Business, Nairobi.
And on to matters regarding housing. Major informal and urban settlements in the 47 counties are set to be upgraded in a 45 billion shillings project funded by the World Bank through a conditional grant. According to Housing Principal Secretary Charles Hinga, 30 billion shillings will be accessed through Phase 2 of the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Program, with the remaining 15 billion accessed through the Kenya Urban Support Program. PS Hinga says the 15 billion shillings will be shared by the counties through a formula on population and challenge the electorate to make sure the funds are well utilized. The PS was addressing the press in Naivasha after opening a two-day consultative meeting on the implementation of the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Program and the Kenya Urban Support Program. And up next, we have the financial report. It clearly was an exciting day at the market, with one counter gaining as much as 70% compared to yesterday and the shilling closing at 101 units to the dollar. And that's it for business. I'm Julians Amboko. In international news, British police have arrested WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, who had been living in Ecuador's embassy in London since 2012 to avoid arrest and extradition.
Well, footage appeared to show police dragging a bearded Assange from the embassy and putting him into a police van after Ecuador withdrew his asylum.
The 47-year-old Australian national was initially arrested for breaching the terms of his bail and was later found guilty before London court.
Now back home, and the second batch of the winners of the NTV Watch and Win were awarded this afternoon.
Some good news finally. The gifts included a fully paid for holiday and shopping vouchers. The 10 winners received the gifts at the Nation Centre.
Colin Doma, one of the winners, received the fully paid trip to El Mantaita, while the rest of the winners received their shopping vouchers.
Quite envious, Colin. So the grand winner will win a fully paid for trip for 2 to Dubai for 4 nights and 5 days.
The winner is set to be announced during the grand draw set for the 31st of May. The promotion is a partnership between NTV and Bonfire Adventures, and
I've never won. This is my first time. I'm very happy. I'm the happiest woman in the world.
I normally watch AM Live in the morning, so I saw the advertisement for winning a trip with the channel. So that's where I go to answer the message.
Well, you don't have to be envious like us because we can't take part in it, but you watch and answer the questions that pop up as the programming continues. Well, something else you need to look forward to from our products, what was billed as a solution to better healthcare has turned out to be the face of corruption in government and how short-sightedness in management can kill the dream of an entire population.
Well, the rust and dust on the containers can be spotted from a distance. These were to be used as mobile clinics, but for the 4 years they've been in the country, none have been put to use.
In the Daily Nation tomorrow, read the story of how the Afia House scam played out and why the taxpayer faces a double loss should the project be revived.
Right, from that, we shift focus now to sports news is coming up. Sean Cardavillis is driving that agenda. Stay with us.
News now. Control for the billions of shillings in the sports fund has moved to the courts, with a Nairobi businessman challenging the amendments to the Sports Act 2013. There are fears that if President Uhuru Kenyatta assents to the amendments as currently constituted, the fund will be controlled by the Treasury and not that of the Ministry of Sports.
The Sports Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 25 of 2018, first reading.
In October 2018, an amendment bill was introduced in Parliament whose repercussions could be far-ranging to Kenyan sports funding.
The net effect of that is that the National Sports Fund, which had been established by that act, has been dissolved.
The sports fund has been billed as a panacea to all that ails Kenyan sports, with none other than the president hailing its benefits.
When we said that we were going to add a tax to gambling, I think this year I can proudly say that sports, culture and arts will truly take center stage in our republic.
The proposed amendment to the Sports Act, initiated by the Finance Secretary Henry Rotich, seeks to have the fund domiciled by the Ministry of Finance.
There are almost 28 billion that has been collected to finance sports in this country is now at peril of being handled by an illegal entity.
To prevent this eventuality, businessman Nicholas Muna has gone to court seeking orders stopping the president from assenting to the bill, citing that public participation was not done and it is not anchored in the right statutory requirement.
So what the minister did is that he took a backdoor scheme, and 2 days later published, that is on the 25th of October 2018, published now this legal notice that we are challenging.
If at all the president in his own wisdom assents to this bill and makes it an act of parliament, comes back to this court and says there was lack of public participation, lack of all those things he's alleging, so that he can challenge the finality of this process.
After hearing both parties, Justice James Macau directed that all respondents file replies within a period of 30 days and that the matter be heard on the 16th of July. The sports fund is currently operational, with the Kenya Open having received a 250 million shillings cash injection and the national football team preparations for AFCON 2019 bagging a 244 million shillings boost. However, with the tussle ongoing between the Ministry of Sports and Ministry of Finance, sports funding may return to the dark days of begging. Therefore, Kenyan sports stakeholders will have to keep an eye on both Parliament and the courts, with the President ultimately holding the fate of the sports fund in his hands. In football, Tusker banked a 1-0 win over KCB in a Kenyan Premier League match that was played at the Kenyatta Stadium in Machakos to end their 3-match winless run. Noah Wafula scored the lone goal that took the Brewers to 6th, tied on 34 points, with 5th place Kakamega Homeboys. The Bankers, who suffered their first defeat in 5 matches, remain 9th on 29 points. In Bungoma, Collins Wakungu scored the all-important goal as Nzoia Sugar beat Vihiga United 1-0. Nzoia moves 2 places up to 10th with 29 points, while Vihiga remain 15th with 20 after 22 rounds. At the Moi Stadium in Kisumu, Kariobangi Sharks and Western Steamer played out a barren draw. Sofapaka coach John Baraza has been voted the best coach in the Kenyan Premier League in the month of March. Baraza guided Batoto Bamungu to 4 wins in 4 KPL matches, with his Chargers scoring 8 goals and conceding just 1. Baraza garnered 8 points in a poll conducted by Sports Journalists Association, that's SJAC. The football panel with AFC Leopards tactician Andre Kasambungu, he was second, and Gor Mahia's Hassan Oktay came in third. Baraza becomes the 4th winner of the award in the ongoing 2018-2019 season, following in the footsteps of Western Steamers Paul Ogai, Mathari United's Francis Kimanzi, and Gor Mahia's Hassan Oktay.
For sure, I'm very happy, and this one it makes me feel that I'm on the right track. I'm doing something good on the field, so I'm just happy.
Kenyan distance runner Cyrus Ruto has been provisionally suspended due to alleged doping. The IAAS Athletics Integrity Unit has charged the 26-year-old with, quote, the use of a prohibited substance based on evidence from his biological passport, unquote. Ruto is currently ranked 15th in the world in the 5,000 meters. He represented Kenya at the 2017 World Championships in London, where he finished 13th in the 5,000 meters final. He was not selected in the Kenya team at the 2016 Rio Olympics. Murang'a County government has set aside 100 million shillings to revive the rehabilitation of sports infrastructure 4 years after the project stalled. This is in a bid to nurture sports talent and position Murang'a County, that is an hour away from the capital of Nairobi, as an alternative as the home of sport. Martin Wara has the details.
After much talk and waiting, the construction and rehabilitation of 10 fields in the 8 sub-counties in Murang'a, the grounds have been a beehive of activity as the contractor works to beat the deadlines. This portends good tidings for teams based in Murang'a, among them MCL Football Club, that plays in the FKF Division 1 League.
Homa hapa zimezidi, hapa homa pia ziko mingi sana. Sasa unaona sasa hatuna place nyingine za trainia. Sasa inabidi sasa tungengana vile ilivyo, lakini shida iko ya viwanja.
We are doing the walls, we are doing the dais, we are doing modern grass growing, we are doing irrigation and all that partakes to the field that will reach the international standards.
First to be rehabilitated will be the iconic Ihura Stadium and Mumbi grounds in the heart of Murang'a town. The rehabilitation will also include construction of Wakwego Stadium in Maragua sub-county that is designed to meet the standard of a modern stadium.
And all these fields, totaling to about 10, are all geared to the sport development in terms of developing our youth in the sporting area.
In addition to the sporting infrastructure rehabilitation, the county government also seeks to put in place programs to nurture and develop talent in the county, with a sporting academy in the works. One wish from the sportsmen and women in this county is that the fields will be completed in the shortest time possible and more resources will be allocated to nurture talents. Martin Mora, NTV, Murang'a County.
Rift Valley shone in the athletics sections of the Brookside Term 1 National Secondary School Games, even as the preliminary pool games in other disciplines came to an end, with all semi-final participants now decided. Ida Waringa enjoyed the day's action and gives us the highlights.
Brookside Term 1 Games in association with Brookside Dairy.
The Brookside Term 1 National Secondary School Games athletics action took place at the Mbaraki Sports Club. Rift Valley schools had a field day in both short and long distance running. The Rift won the boys' 5,000 meters final, the girls' 3,000 meters race through Anna Sisho, and the girls' 3,000 meters steeplechase final courtesy of Betty Geruto.
Natarajia kushiriki 3,000 meters.
Hii ni mara yangu ya kwanza kufika hapa.
Defending champions Laser Hill will meet Upper Hill in the Rugby Sevens final. This after Laser beat Vihiga 22-7 and Upper Hill edged St. Peter Mumias 12-10 in the semi-finals. Kangaroo cancelled their Day 2 loss with a 25 win over Kabianga to advance to the Rugby 15 semis, where they will face off against Dagoretti High School. Alliance High School and Inform Kakamega High will duel it out in the other semi. In the boys' basketball semis, Laser Hill will take on Agoro Sare and Dagoretti will play Alliance High School. Meanwhile, in girls' basketball semis, former champions Buru Buru and Tigoi will lock horns as defending champions Kaya Tiwi take on St. Bridget's Kiminini. It will be all about the semi-finals in rugby 15s, hockey, handball and basketball, while athletics will get into its ultimate stage on day 4. For NTV, I'm Ida Waringa in Mombasa.
Brookside and
All right, that's the latest sports news. I know Mark's an Arsenal fan. Of course, Arsenal and Chelsea, the English clubs in action in the Europa League. Of course, we'll have the latest on that tomorrow. We'll have a full roundup. But that's the latest sports for now. Back to you, Smriti and Mark.
All right, thanks very much, Sean Cardavillis. Much appreciated. And thanks to you for watching. I'm Smriti Vidyarthi. Good night.
Thank you to Flora Tim for the sign language interpretation. My name is Masai. Let me go catch that game that Sean has just mentioned. Good night.